Welcome back to HOA Neighbor Wars. I am standing in my driveway at 7:30 in the morning, engine idling to melt the ice off my windshield, when Judith Jackson appears at the edge of my property line and shouts, "You are in violation of emission standards, and I am issuing a fine effective immediately." I turn and see her, clipboard already out, burgundy puffer coat bright against the snow that fell overnight. I live in a townhome complex in Jacksonville, Florida, a place called Magnolia Heights Terrace Association, where shared walls mean you hear every argument and every complaint travels faster than the neighborhood group text. I moved here 2 years ago for the price and the commute to my cybersecurity job, and I have learned to save every email and timestamp because this HOA runs on spite and selective enforcement. Judith is the self-appointed compliance officer, a role that gives her exactly zero legal authority but infinite confidence. She has gray hair in tight curls, a black knit hat pulled low, and a smile that appears only when she is about to ruin your day. Right now, she is not smiling. She is pointing at my car, a sedan with snow piled on the roof and hood, exhaust puffing white into the freezing air, and she says it again. I am authorized to issue violations. Period. I ask her what violation she is talking about. She taps her clipboard and says idling for non-commercial purposes beyond 3 minutes constitutes an emissions nuisance under the revised community standards. I check my watch and tell her my car has been running for 90 seconds. She ignores me and writes something down. I feel my jaw tighten, because I am in the middle of a big contract, security audits due by end of week, and distractions like this could cost me real money. I cannot afford to spend my morning arguing with someone who thinks a warm car is a crime. Judith steps closer and says she clocked me yesterday doing the same thing and the day before that, and she has photographic evidence. I tell her I warm my car every winter morning, because ice on the glass is a safety hazard. She cuts me off and says safety is not her department, compliance is, and I have 48 hours to pay the fine or she escalates to the board. I ask how much. She says $200 for the first offense, double for each repeat. My stomach drops because that is insane, but she is already turning to leave. I call after her and ask where this revised standard came from. She stops, looks back, and says, "I will make sure every neighbor knows what you did." Then she walks away, boots crunching in the snow. I stand there for a moment, breath fogging, and I realize this is not about emissions or idling or any actual rule. This is about control. Judith has been escalating complaints across the complex for months, targeting anyone who pushes back on her pet projects, and now I am in her crosshairs. I get in my car, wipe the inside of the windshield, and drive to work, but my mind is already cataloging emails and looking for leverage. I did not chase her accusations, because I already had the receipts. That afternoon, I pull up the HOA master documents from the shared drive and search for any emissions policy. There is nothing. I check the board meeting minutes going back 2 years. No vote on idling restrictions, no discussion, nothing. I screenshot everything and save it in a folder labeled Evidence January. Then, I email the property management company and ask for a copy of the revised community standards Judith referenced. They reply within an hour saying no such document exists and any new rules require a board vote with proper notice. I forward that email to myself 3 times and print a hard copy. This is how I operate. I do not yell. I do not escalate emotionally. I just build a file that speaks for itself. The next morning, I get a notice taped to my door. It is printed on HOA letterhead, signed by Judith, and it says I owe $400 now because she observed another idling violation at 7:15 this morning. I was not even home at 7:15. I was at the gym. I check my phone and confirm the timestamp on my gym check-in app. I screenshot that too. I text my neighbor across the walkway, a guy named Marcus who works night shifts and sees everything, and ask if he noticed anyone near my townhome this morning. He replies immediately, "Yeah, Judith was over there taking pictures of your driveway around 7. Your car was not there." I ask if he would be willing to write that down. He says, "Absolutely, I am tired of her nonsense." I spend my lunch break drafting a formal response to the HOA board. I attach the property management email, the gym timestamp, and a witness statement from Marcus with photos he took showing my empty driveway at 7:10. I send it certified mail and copy the board president, the treasurer, and the management company. I feel a small flicker of satisfaction, but I know this is just round one. Judith does not back down. She doubles down. 2 days later, I come home and find a bright orange sticker on my front window. It says "Vehicle Inspection Required," and underneath in smaller print it claims the HOA has received reports of an abandoned vehicle, and I must provide proof of registration and insurance within 24 hours or face towing. My car is parked in my assigned spot. Current tags, no damage, engine running fine. I peel the sticker off and see Judith watching from her townhome balcony 2 buildings over. She waves. I do not wave back. I call the towing company listed on the sticker. The dispatcher says they have a standing contract with Magnolia Heights Terrace Association, and they respond to all vehicle complaints from the compliance officer. I ask what complaints. She says she cannot disclose details, but the work order mentions snow coverage obscuring identification and possible abandonment. I feel my blood pressure spike, because that is a lie, a deliberate lie, and now I know Judith is not just harassing me, she is coordinating with outside vendors to do it. I thank the dispatcher and hang up. Then I do what I always do. I start digging. That night I run a business license search on the towing company. It is called Premier Tow and Recovery. Owned by a guy named Ron Castellano, and it has been operating in Jacksonville for 6 years. I check the HOA financials, which are public record for association members, and I find monthly payments to Premier Tow going back 8 months. The amounts are consistent, $250 a month, which seems weird because we do not have that many towing incidents. I cross-reference the board meeting minutes, and there is no contract approval vote for Premier Tow. I search for any mention of a towing policy change. Nothing. I search Judith's name. Lots of mentions, mostly her filing complaints, but no vote authorizing her to issue towing orders. I smell something wrong. I create a new folder, label it Towing Evidence, and start downloading every relevant document. Then I email the HOA treasurer and ask for a breakdown of the Premier Tow payments. He responds the next day saying those payments are for on-call service and administrative overhead, approved by the compliance officer under discretionary spending. I reply and ask when the board voted to give the compliance officer discretionary spending authority. He does not answer. The temperature drops hard that week. A winter storm is rolling in from the north, expected to knock out power in some areas, and I need to secure heat supplies now because my townhome has electric baseboard heating and no backup. I drive to the hardware store and buy 2 space heaters, extension cords, and a pack of emergency candles. When I get home, I see Judith in the parking lot with a camera, taking photos of my car from multiple angles. I park, get out, and ask what she is doing. She says she is conducting a surprise photo inspection to document ongoing violations. I ask what violations. She points at my car and says the snow on the roof constitutes a hazard, and I am required to clear it within 6 hours of accumulation. I look at my car. There is maybe an inch of snow on the roof from flurries an hour ago. Every other car in the lot has the same dusting. I tell her that. She says the others are not under compliance review. I am. I take a breath and tell Judith I am not going to engage with fake inspections. She smiles for the first time and says, I am authorized to issue violations, period. I turn and walk toward my door. She calls after me and says I should check my mailbox. I stop, go to the mailbox cluster, and pull out an envelope. It is from the HOA, and inside is a trespass warning. It says I have been observed using common area amenities in a manner inconsistent with community standards, and I am hereby restricted from the clubhouse, the fitness room, and the community park pavilion until further notice. I read it twice. I have not used the clubhouse in months. The fitness room has been closed for renovation since Thanksgiving. The park pavilion is a public green space. I look up, and Judith is still watching, camera in hand. She waves again. I go inside, close the door, and sit down at my desk. My hands are shaking. Not from cold, but from anger. This is not normal HOA pettiness. This is targeted, methodical harassment, and it is starting to affect my ability to focus on work. I have 2 major client presentations this week, and I cannot afford to be distracted by someone who has decided to make me her personal project. I open my evidence folders and start organizing everything chronologically. Fake idling fines, fake inspection stickers, fake trespass warnings, all signed by Judith, none of them backed by actual board votes or legal authority. I have timestamps, witness statements, and property management emails that contradict her claims. But I also know that proving she is wrong is not enough. I need to prove why she is doing this, and I need to prove it in a way that forces consequences. That is when I remember the towing payments. I pull up the HOA financials again and look closer. The payments to Premier Tow started exactly 1 week after Judith was appointed compliance officer. The amounts are always $250, paid on the 15th of every month. No variation. I check the invoice descriptions. They all say the same thing: monthly retainer and administrative coordination. I do not know what administrative coordination means, but it sounds like code for something. I decide to call Ron Castellano directly. I find his number on the Premier Tow website and dial. He picks up on the 3rd ring. I introduce myself, say I am a resident at Magnolia Heights, and I have some questions about the towing contract. He is friendly at first, says sure. What do you need? I ask how the contract works. He says the HOA compliance officer calls him when there is a vehicle issue, he dispatches a truck, and he bills the HOA monthly for availability. I ask if he has towed many cars from our complex. He pauses, then says actually no, not a single one. I ask why the HOA is paying him if he is not towing anything. He pauses again, longer this time, and then he says, you would have to ask Judith about that. I thank him and hang up. My heart is pounding because that just confirmed it. The HOA is paying Premier Tow for nothing, and Judith is the one authorizing it. I do not know if she is getting a kickback or if this is just a sweetheart deal, but either way it is fraud. I pull up my notes and add a new line: towing scam, evidence of coordination, no actual service provided. Then I hear a knock at my door. I open it, and there is a security guard standing there, older guy in a gray uniform, radio on his belt. I recognize him. His name is Dennis, and he is the overnight supervisor for the neighborhood security company. We have talked a few times in passing. Always polite. He looks uncomfortable. He says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something." I step aside and let him in. He stays near the door, glances around, and then says, "Judith called my dispatcher tonight and tried to get me written up for not enforcing a vehicle violation against you." I stare at him. He continues, "She said I saw your car idling this morning and I did not report it, and she wants my supervisor to reprimand me. But I was not even on shift this morning. I work nights. She is making it up." I feel a wave of relief because Dennis is exactly the ally I need. I ask if he would be willing to document that. He nods and says, "I already sent an email to my boss with the timestamps from my shift log. I was nowhere near your building this morning." He pauses and adds, "She has been calling us constantly, trying to get us to write up residents for stuff that is not even in our job description. My boss is getting tired of it." I thank him and tell him I am building a case and I might need his help later. He says, "Anytime I am done with her nonsense." After Dennis leaves, I sit back down and update my evidence file. I now have witness statements from Marcus and Dennis, financial records showing questionable towing payments, emails from property management contradicting Judith's claims, and a timeline that proves she is fabricating incidents. I also have the trespass warning, which is going to backfire on her because it restricts me from spaces I am legally entitled to use. I just need one more piece, something that ties it all together and proves intent. I think about the boomerang line she used, "I will make sure every neighbor knows what you did." She said it like a threat, like she was going to spread rumors and isolate me. I decide to test that theory. The next day, I get a group text from a neighbor I barely know, someone 3 buildings over named Angela. The text says, "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. Judith has been telling people you threatened her and you are under investigation by the board." I feel my stomach drop. I reply immediately and say that is completely false and I have never threatened anyone. Angela responds, "I figured. She has been weird lately. Just wanted you to know what she is saying." I thank her, and then I screenshot the text exchange. This is the evidence I needed. Judith is not just filing fake violations, she is actively trying to destroy my reputation in the neighborhood, and now I have proof she is lying to other residents. I forward the screenshot to the board president with a subject line that says "Defamation and Harassment by Compliance Officer." In the email, I lay out everything: the fake idling fines, the fake inspection, the trespass warning, the towing threats, and now the false statements to neighbors. I attach all my evidence, every timestamp, every witness statement, every contradictory email from property management. I close with a simple question. Does the board approve of this conduct, or is Judith operating without authority? I hit send and I feel a small knot of tension release, because now it is on the record and the board has to respond. They do not respond. Not that day, not the next day, not the day after that. The storm hits on Thursday night, heavy snow and ice, and the power flickers twice but stays on. I keep my space heaters ready just in case. Friday morning, I wake up to find my car buried under a snowbank. The plow came through overnight and pushed a massive berm right up against my assigned spot, 3 feet high, hard-packed snow mixed with ice and road salt. I grab a shovel and start digging. It takes me 40 minutes to clear enough space to open the driver door. I am sweating inside my electric blue coat, breath coming hard, and I am almost done when I hear a camera shutter click. I turn and Judith is standing 10 feet away, taking pictures. She says, "I am documenting your unauthorized snow pile." I stare at her, shovel in hand, and I say, "The plow dumped this here. I did not pile it." She shakes her head and says, "You are responsible for clearing snow from your assigned area within 12 hours, and this pile has been here for 14 hours. I point at the berm and say, "I just spent 40 minutes clearing it." She says, "That does not change the violation timeline." She taps her camera screen and says, "This will be submitted to the board as evidence of non-compliance." I lose it. I tell her the plow created this pile, not me, and if she had any integrity, she would report the plow company, not the resident who is cleaning up their mess. She smiles and says, I am authorized to issue violations, period. I feel my jaw clench and I have to force myself to turn away because if I keep talking, I am going to say something I regret. I finish clearing the snow, get in my car, and drive to work. My hands are shaking on the wheel. I pull into the office parking lot, sit there for 5 minutes, and then I call Ron Castellano again. This time I do not ask polite questions. I tell him I have documentation showing the HOA is paying Premier Tao $250 a month for 0 services, and I want to know what the arrangement is. He is quiet for a long moment, then he sighs and says, Look, I did not want to get involved. But Judith approached me 8 months ago and said the HOA needed a towing partner on retainer. She said it was for liability reasons, quick response for abandoned vehicles, that kind of thing. I agreed to a monthly fee for availability. But she has never actually called me to tow a car. Not once. She just sends me an invoice approval every month, and I send her a thank you email. I ask if he has copies of those emails. He says yes. I ask if he would be willing to share them. He hesitates, then says, If you are trying to prove something shady is going on, yeah, I will help. I do not like being used. I thank him and give him my email address. 10 minutes later, I have a PDF with 8 months of correspondence between Ron and Judith. Every email from Judith uses her personal email, not the HOA address, and every email includes language like ongoing partnership and administrative coordination. There is no mention of actual towing services. I read through them twice, and then I see it. In one email from October, Judith writes, Please remit the usual consulting fee to my account as discussed. Ron replies with a confirmation. I feel my pulse spike, because that is it. That is the smoking gun. Judith is not just authorizing payments to Premier Tao, she is receiving consulting fees from them. She is getting kickbacks from HOA funds. I download everything, add it to my evidence folder, and then I call a friend who is a lawyer. I explain the situation, the harassment, the fake violations, the towing scam, the kickbacks. He listens and then he says, You need to report this to the board in writing, and if they do not act, you need to report it to the state. HOA board members have fiduciary duties, and if they are allowing fraud, they can be held personally liable. He also says I should consider filing a police report for the defamation and harassment. I thank him and hang up. Then I draft the most detailed, evidence-heavy email I have ever written. If you want to see how this HOA nightmare ends, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. I send the email to every board member, the property management company, and I CC the HOA attorney on file. The subject line is fraud, harassment, and breach of fiduciary duty by compliance officer. I attach everything. The fake violations, the witness statements, the financial records, the emails from Ron showing the kickback arrangement, the screenshots of Judith spreading false rumors, and the trespass warning that restricts me from common areas I am legally entitled to use. I close with a demand. Immediate suspension of Judith Jackson from any compliance role. A full financial audit of all payments to Premier Tao, and a formal apology for defamatory statements made to neighbors. I give them 72 hours to respond. Then I hit send. The response comes faster than I expected. 6 hours later, I get a call from the HOA attorney, a woman named Lillian Torres. She says she has reviewed my email and the attachments, and she has serious concerns about the compliance officer's conduct. She asks if I would be willing to meet with her and the board president. I say yes. She schedules a meeting for Sunday afternoon at the clubhouse, which is ironic, because Judith banned me from the clubhouse, but I do not mention that. I just agree and mark my calendar. Saturday is quiet. I spend the day working, finishing up the client audits, and by evening I feel caught up enough to breathe. I check my phone and there is a missed call from Dennis, the security guard. I call him back and he says, "Hey, just a heads up. Judith tried to get into the clubhouse tonight with a key she is not supposed to have, and when I told her it was locked for a private event, she threatened to have me fired. I logged it in my incident report. I thought you should know." I thank him and add that to my notes. Judith is escalating again, and I can feel the pressure building towards something bigger. Sunday morning, I wake up to another surprise. There is a notice taped to my door, this time on official HOA letterhead, signed by the board president. It says the board has scheduled an emergency meeting for tonight at 6, and my presence is requested. I text Lillian Torres and ask if this is the same meeting we discussed. She replies no. This is a separate board meeting. Ours is at 2. Come to that one first. I feel a twist of anxiety because something is happening fast and I do not have full visibility. I get dressed, grab my evidence folder, and head to the clubhouse. Lillian is waiting outside when I arrive. She is in her 50s, sharp suit, no-nonsense demeanor. She shakes my hand and says, "Before we go in, I want you to know I have already advised the board that Judith's actions appear to violate multiple HOA bylaws and possibly state fraud statutes. They are taking this seriously." We walk inside, and the board president, a man named Tom Ellison, is sitting at a table with the treasurer, a woman named Yolanda. Tom looks tired. He gestures for me to sit and says, "We owe you an apology. We had no idea Judith was operating this way." Yolanda adds, "We gave her compliance authority to handle routine issues, but we never authorized fines, towing threats, or any of this." I pull out my evidence folder and walk them through everything. The fake idling violations, the fabricated inspection sticker, the trespass warning, the towing scam, and the kickback emails from Ron Castellano. Tom's face goes pale when he sees the consulting fee line. He says, "This is embezzlement." Yolanda nods and says, "We need to terminate her immediately and report this to the police." Lillian agrees and says she will draft a formal termination letter and recommend the board suspend all payments to Premier Tao pending a full audit. I feel a surge of relief because finally, someone is listening. Then Tom says, "There is one more thing you need to know. Judith called an emergency board meeting for tonight, and she is planning to propose a vote to fine you $5,000 and place a lien on your property for repeated violations. She has been lobbying the other board members all week, and she has 2 people who might vote with her." I feel my stomach drop. I ask if the vote is legitimate. Lillian shakes her head and says, "Not if the violations are fabricated," which they clearly are. But if the board does not have a quorum of members who understand that, she could ram it through. Tom says, "That is why we are meeting now. We need to make sure everyone sees this evidence before tonight." I leave the clubhouse with a plan. Lillian is going to send the evidence package to all board members by email within the hour, and Tom is going to call each one personally to explain the situation. I am supposed to show up at the 6 o'clock meeting and be ready to present my case if needed. I drive home, eat a quick lunch, and then I sit down to prepare. I print extra copies of everything, organize them in folders, and I rehearse the key points: fake violations, no board votes, financial fraud, defamation, harassment. I keep it simple and factual. At 5:30, I get a text from Marcus, my neighbor. It says, "Heads up, Judith is outside your building with 2 other people, and they are taking pictures of your car again." I look out my window and sure enough, there she is. Burgundy coat bright in the fading daylight, clipboard in hand, flanked by two people I do not recognize. I grab my phone, open the video app, and step outside. I do not say anything. I just start recording. Judith sees me and says, "We are conducting a final compliance review before tonight's board meeting." I ask who authorized it. She says, "I am authorized to issue violations, period." I keep recording. One of the people with her, a man in his 40s, says, "Is this really necessary, Judith?" She snaps at him and says, "Yes, document everything." I let them finish their little inspection and then I go back inside. I send the video to Lillian Torres with a note. Judith is still fabricating violations as of 30 minutes ago. She replies, "Noted, see you at 6. I spend the next 20 minutes going over my notes one more time, and then I head to the clubhouse. The meeting room is packed. All 5 board members are there, plus Lillian Torres, plus maybe a dozen residents who heard about the emergency meeting and showed up to watch. Judith is sitting in the front row. Burgundy coat still on, black hat on the chair beside her. She looks confident. Tom Ellison calls the meeting to order and says, "Before we address the proposed fine and lien, we need to discuss some concerns that have been raised about the compliance officer role." Judith interrupts and says, "I have documentation of multiple violations, and I am requesting an immediate vote." Tom holds up a hand and says, "We will get to that. But first we need to hear from the resident in question." He gestures to me. I stand, walk to the front, and I lay out the case. I show the fake idling fines with no supporting policy. I show the property management email confirming no revised standards exist. I show the fake inspection sticker and the gym timestamp proving I was not home. I show Marcus's witness statement. I show the trespass warning and the legal opinion from Lillian that it is invalid. Then I show the towing scam. I project the HOA financial records on the screen, highlight the 8 months of payments to Premier Tow, and I read the email from Ron Castellano confirming 0 cars were ever towed. The room goes silent. Then I show the kickback email. The one where Judith asks Ron to remit the usual consulting fee to her account. I let it sit on the screen for a long moment. Yolanda, the treasurer, says, "Oh my God." Tom looks at Judith and says, "Do you want to explain this?" Judith stands, face red, and says that email is taken out of context. Ron and I had a consulting arrangement separate from the HOA contract. Tom says, "You used your position as compliance officer to authorize HOA payments to a vendor who is paying you personally. That is embezzlement." Judith shouts, "I am authorized to issue violations, period." Tom says, "Not anymore. You are not." Lillian Torres stands and says, "Miss Jackson, effective immediately you are suspended from all HOA duties pending a full investigation. We will be referring this matter to local law enforcement and conducting a financial audit. You are required to return all HOA property, including keys, documents, and any equipment, within 24 hours. Judith stares at her, mouth open, and then she turns to the other board members and says, "You are all making a huge mistake. I will make sure every neighbor knows what you did." The room is dead silent. Then Marcus, sitting in the back, says, "You already tried that, Judith, and it did not work." The board votes unanimously to suspend Judith, terminate the Premier Tow contract, and rescind all violations issued against me. They also vote to issue a formal apology letter to be posted in the community newsletter. Judith grabs her coat and storms out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattles. The room exhales. Tom looks at me and says, "I am sorry you had to go through this. We should have caught it sooner. I nod and say, just make sure the audit is thorough. Lillian says, it will be, and we will keep you updated. I walk out of the clubhouse and the cold air hits me like a reset. I feel lighter than I have in weeks. Dennis, the security guard, is standing near the entrance and he gives me a thumbs up. He says, I heard it went well. I say, yeah, it did. He says, good, she had it coming. I thank him for his help and head home. That night I sleep better than I have since this whole thing started. Monday morning I get an email from Lillian Torres. The board has hired a forensic accountant to review all HOA financials going back 2 years. They have also filed a formal complaint with the Jacksonville police regarding the kickback scheme. She says the police are opening an investigation and they may contact me for a statement. I reply and say I am happy to cooperate. Then I get a call from Ron Castellano. He says the HOA has terminated the contract and he is cutting all ties with Judith. He also says, for what it is worth, I am sorry I got pulled into this. I should have asked more questions. I tell him I appreciate that and I hang up. The week goes by and things start to settle. I finish my client audits, hit all my deadlines, and my boss sends me a thank you email for keeping everything on track despite the distractions. I do not tell him about the HOA war, but I appreciate the acknowledgement. Wednesday evening I get a text from Angela, the neighbor who warned me about Judith spreading rumors. She says, hey, I heard what happened at the board meeting. I just want to say thank you for standing up to her. A lot of us were afraid to. I reply and say, you are welcome, and thank you for the heads up. It helped. Thursday I get another notice in the mail, this one from the HOA attorney. It is a formal letter confirming that all violations issued by Judith Jackson are rescinded, all fines are canceled, and the trespass warning is void. It also includes a written apology on behalf of the board for the harassment and inconvenience. I file it with my evidence folder, and I feel a sense of closure. Friday afternoon I am walking to my car when I see a tow truck pulling into the complex. My heart skips for a second, but then I see it is not Premier Tow, it is a different company, and they are hooking up a car that actually looks abandoned, flat tires and expired tags. I keep walking. When I get to my car, I notice something on the windshield. It is a handwritten note that says, thank you for getting rid of Judith. She made all of our lives harder. It is signed by someone named Claire, a resident I have never met. I fold the note and put it in my pocket. That weekend I run into Marcus at the mailbox cluster. He says, did you hear? Judith is trying to sell her townhome and move. I ask if that is confirmed. He says, yeah, I saw the for sale sign go up this morning. I feel a flicker of satisfaction, but I do not gloat. I just say, well, hopefully the next person is easier to deal with. Marcus laughs and says, the bar is pretty low. The forensic audit finishes 2 weeks later. Lillian Torres sends me a summary. The accountant found that Judith had been siphoning HOA funds through multiple vendors, not just Premier Tow. The total amount is over $12,000. The board has filed a civil suit to recover the funds, and the police investigation is ongoing. Lillian says the HOA's insurance will cover the legal costs, and the board is implementing new financial controls to prevent this from happening again. I reply and thank her for keeping me in the loop. A month later, I get a subpoena to provide a statement to the police. I meet with a detective, walk him through everything, and hand over copies of all my evidence. He says, this is one of the most well-documented cases I have seen. You did our job for us. I say, I work in cybersecurity, documentation is kind of my thing. He laughs and says, well, it paid off. The case is going to the district attorney and they are considering charges for embezzlement and fraud. Spring arrives and the snow melts. The complex feels different, quieter, less tense. The new compliance officer is a retired teacher named Ed who sends polite reminder emails about trash day and nothing else. The board votes to eliminate the discretionary spending authority and require all vendor contracts to be approved by a majority vote. Tom Ellison steps down as president, and Yolanda takes over. She sends a newsletter thanking residents for their patience during the transition and promising more transparency going forward. I get a call from Ron Castellano one last time. He says, "I just wanted to let you know, I cooperated fully with the police and the DA is using my emails as evidence. Judith is facing charges and I think they are going to stick." I thank him and say, "I appreciate you doing the right thing." He says, "Yeah, well, I learned my lesson. No more handshake deals." One evening I am sitting at my desk, wrapping up some work, when I get an email from the district attorney's office. It is a victim notification letter informing me that Judith Jackson has been formally charged with embezzlement, fraud, and official misconduct. The trial is scheduled for 6 months out and I may be called as a witness. I read it twice and then I close my laptop. I do not feel vindicated or triumphant. I just feel tired and ready to move on. That weekend I decide to do something I have not done in months. I walk over to the community park pavilion, the place Judith banned me from with her fake trespass warning. It is a nice day, cool but sunny, and there are a few families having a picnic. I sit on a bench and just breathe. A kid runs past chasing a soccer ball and I smile. This is what the neighborhood is supposed to feel like. Normal. Safe. Boring in a good way. Marcus walks by with his dog and stops to chat. He says, "You know, people are still talking about that board meeting. You are kind of a legend now." I laugh and say, "I just wanted to warm up my car in peace." He says, "Yeah, but you took down a tyrant in the process." I shrug and say, "I just had good documentation." He says, "Well, whatever it was, it worked. The complex is a lot better without her." I nod and we stand there for a moment, watching the families in the park. Then he says, "You sticking around?" I say, "Yeah, for now. This place is not so bad when the HOA is not run by a con artist." The trial happens in October. I take a day off work and drive to the courthouse. The prosecutor calls me to the stand and I walk through the evidence again. The fake violations, the financial records, the kickback emails, the defamation. Judith's attorney tries to argue that the compliance officer role gave her discretionary authority, but the prosecutor shows the bylaws and the board meeting minutes, proving no such authority was ever granted. The jury deliberates for 3 hours and comes back with a guilty verdict on all counts. Judith is sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA. I watch her walk out in handcuffs and I feel nothing. Just relief that it is over. I drive home and park in my assigned spot, the same spot where this whole thing started. I look at the space where the snowbank used to be, and I think about how much has changed. The HOA has new leadership, new policies, and a new attitude. The neighbors are friendlier. The harassment is gone. I get out of my car, lock it, and walk to my door. My phone buzzes, and it is a text from Dennis. It says, "Heard the verdict. Justice served." I reply, "Yeah, finally." He sends a thumbs up emoji. That night I sit down and write an email to Lillian Torres, thanking her for her help and for taking the case seriously. She replies within the hour and says, "You did all the hard work. I just made sure the board listened. We are implementing training for all board members on fiduciary duties and legal compliance." This should not happen again. I close my laptop and lean back in my chair. The contract work is steady, the neighborhood is stable, and the HOA drama is behind me. I did not set out to be a whistleblower or a crusader. I just wanted to document the truth and make sure someone paid attention. A few weeks later, the HOA holds its annual meeting. Yolanda presents the audit results and announces new financial safeguards, including quarterly reviews and mandatory board approval for all vendor contracts over $100. She also introduces Ed, the new compliance officer, and clarifies that his role is advisory only and he has no authority to issue fines or towing orders. The room applauds. Tom Ellison, now just a regular board member, stands and says, "I want to publicly apologize again for not catching the problem sooner. We let a bad actor operate unchecked, and it hurt people. We are committed to doing better." More applause. After the meeting, I shake hands with a few neighbors and head home. As I walk across the parking lot, I see the space where Premier Toe used to park when Judith called them for her fake inspections. It is empty now, just another parking spot. I think about the frozen padlock that used to hang on the maintenance gate, the one Judith claimed proved I blocked HOA access. That lock is gone too, removed during the audit when they found it was never authorized in the first place. It was just another prop in her theater of control. I get back to my townhome, hang up my electric blue coat, and brew a cup of coffee. I sit at my desk and open my evidence folder one last time. I have kept everything. Every email, every timestamp, every witness statement, every receipt. I do not need it anymore, but I keep it anyway. In my line of work, you learn that documentation is power. It is the difference between he said, she said, and here is exactly what happened. It is the reason I won and Judith lost. I close the folder and archive it to an external drive. Then I open my work queue and get back to the security audits. Life is boring again, in the best possible way. No surprise inspections, no tow threats, no compliance officer stalking my driveway with a clipboard. Just work, neighbors who wave hello, and an HOA that operates like it is supposed to. I did not set out to change the neighborhood, but I am glad I did. A year passes. Judith's townhome sells and new owners move in, a young couple with a toddler. They introduce themselves and ask if the neighborhood is quiet. I say, it is now. They smile and say they are looking forward to settling in. I tell them if they ever have HOA questions, feel free to ask. They thank me and head inside. The district attorney's office sends me a final letter confirming that Judith has begun serving her sentence and the restitution payments are being processed. The HOA receives a check for the full $12,000 plus interest. Yolanda sends a newsletter announcing the recovery and thanking the residents who came forward with information. She does not name me specifically, but a few neighbors send texts saying they know it was me, and they appreciate it. Winter comes again. The first snow falls on a Tuesday morning, and I go outside to warm up my car. I let it idle for 5 minutes, clearing the windshield, and no one says a word. No clipboard, no camera, no compliance officer. Just a quiet morning in a quiet neighborhood. I drive to work, and I smile the whole way. That evening, I get a call from a reporter at the local news station. She says they are doing a story on HOA abuses, and she heard about my case. She asks if I would be willing to be interviewed. I think about it for a moment, and then I say, no, I would rather not. She asks why. I say, because it is over, and I just want to move on. She thanks me and says she understands. Then she asks if I have any advice for other people dealing with HOA harassment. I think for a second and say, document everything, know your rights, and do not be afraid to push back when someone is abusing their power. She says, that is good advice, thank you. We hang up. I sit down at my desk and open my laptop. There is an email from my boss asking if I can take on another security contract. A big one, 6-month engagement with a retail client. I reply and say yes. Then I lean back and look out the window. Snow is falling again, light and steady, and the street lights are just coming on. The neighborhood looks peaceful. The kind of peaceful you only appreciate after you have fought for it. I think about Judith and her catchphrase, "I am authorized to issue violations, period." I think about how she used those words like a shield, like they made her untouchable. But authority without accountability is just tyranny, and tyranny does not last when people start asking questions. I asked questions. I saved receipts. I built a case. And I won. I close my laptop and stand up. I walk to the window and press my hand against the cold glass. Somewhere across the complex, the new compliance officer is probably sending a polite email about trash pickup or holiday decorations. Somewhere else, a family is settling in for dinner. Somewhere else, a neighbor is shoveling their driveway without fear of a fake violation. This is what normal looks like. This is what I fought for. The next morning I wake up early, make coffee, and check the weather. Another storm is coming, but this time I am not worried. I have heat, I have supplies, and I have an HOA that actually follows its own rules. I get dressed, grab my electric blue coat, and head outside to start my car. The engine turns over smooth, and I let it warm up while I clear the fresh snow off the windows. A neighbor walks by with their dog and waves. I wave back. No drama, no threats, just a normal winter morning. I get in the car and pull out of the complex. As I drive past the main entrance, I see the Magnolia Heights Terrace Association sign, the one that used to fill me with dread every time I saw it. Now it is just a sign. The HOA is just an organization. And I am just a guy who stood up for himself when someone tried to abuse their power. I turn onto the main road and head to work, and I feel lighter than I have in a long time. That is the thing about bullies. They count on you being too tired, too scared, or too busy to fight back. Judith counted on that. She counted on me just paying the fines, ignoring the harassment, and letting her run the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. But I did not. I fought back with the only weapon that matters in situations like this. The truth. Documented and undeniable. And in the end, the truth won. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.